To order. Everyone please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I guess right off the bat we have oath of office. Morgan.
If you want to just face, all right. We can have everybody. So raise your right hand. I, in your first and last name,
I, Morgan Hibba,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the city charter and the Constitution
I will support the city charter and constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the state of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the state of Minnesota,
and that I will discharge faithfully
and I will discharge faithfully
the duties of office of council member
the duties of office of council member
in the city of Crookston,
in the city of Crookston,
in the state of Minnesota,
in the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and abilities.
All right.
Okay, Ashley, can I have roll call, please?
Menard,
Yes, here.
Hidma,
Here.
Jurdy,
Here.
Fisher,
Here.
Briggs,
Here.
Cavalier,
Here.
Kressel,
Here.
Klatt.
Here.
Okay, it's time for the open forum. If anyone would like to address the council on any issue not already on tonight's agenda, may come to the podium, state your first and last name and address, please.
Good evening, Jeff Sperling, 1210 Alexander Street. I'm here to address the sidewalk that's coming in the front of my property. We were not made aware of it. We know we have street work taking place down from us, but not in front of us. And it was last Friday a week and a half ago, whatever it was. We were unaware of a sidewalk coming in. We come home, some of my neighbors are here. We come home, we have pink lines on our driveways. What's this about? And Tom Bedbrotten was over, all you know, Tom, and he was saying because they're putting a sidewalk in. Nobody in the neighborhood is really made aware of it, at least not us, because the work's not being done in front of our house. But all of a sudden, here's a sidewalk coming in. And we got our first notification, well, I'll back up a little bit. Well, one of my neighbors did call our councilman, just let him know that this, and also called Brandon, just let him know that asking what's going on here. And council member Klatt said the best thing for us to do is come here and visit tonight. And so we're coming here to state our concerns. Not knowing about it is probably my biggest concern, the lack of communication. If the residents of the neighborhood were brought in to have a conversation about it, or at least made known well in advance that this was taking place, it might have been fair, might have been worth the conversation. All of a sudden come home at 5 o'clock after work, you got pink stripes on your driveway and the contractors are gone. So there's nobody you can talk to. And there we go. It's down the track. I mean, train left Chicago, it's already in Seattle. That's how far down the track this thing is. And I think it's unfair to the neighborhood. It's unfair to the neighbors that we should have a voice in this. We pay taxes in the community for a reason, to have a voice, that we be heard. So one thing about our street, if you don't know, Alexander Street on our side of the street, the east side, gets a ton of snow. We can barely keep our driveways clean, let alone now we have to pick up I'm assuming the neighbor or the resident is responsible for cleaning the snow. Well, good luck, Jeff. Good luck, rest of the neighbors, because it's almost impossible to keep your driveway clean. Plus, we don't have much frontage. These people will be walking 20 feet away from my house. So I just think there's more opportunity to have a conversation here. I know you got a grant. I know there's no assessments, but we should have a voice. That's my speak. And I welcome anybody else from the neighborhood.
Good evening. My name is Colton Hermrick, and I live on 1206 Alexander Street. I'm here today for concern on a potential sidewalk going in our front yard that we never got a notice for or even knew about. after speaking to our fellow neighbors that this will affect, there is not one household that is for this, and there's 4 of them on our side, but there's also one on the other side of the street that he was gone this weekend, so never got to talk to him. I'm just asking the council to reconsider for these reasons. The sidewalk is marked out 14 feet from our curb. I mean, it's a ways in our front yard. And from the center of the street, it's 34 feet, which not only affects our privacy, but takes up a good chunk of our front yard. There is no conjoining sidewalk at the end of the sidewalk. So, I mean, you get to the end, you're still not going anywhere. And I feel this hurts the value of our house, as the sidewalk would hurt our front yardage, but also increase maintenance. I hope the council will reconsider this and listen to the residents that this is affecting, as I feel the money would be put to better use fixing existing sidewalks around town. Thank you.
I'm Renee Sperling, 1210 Alexander Street. I guess my biggest complaint is we were just, like Jeff said, the pink line was there Friday before last, or a week ago Friday, right? And I know Colton talked to Brandon and got some information like, well, my bad, and I don't think that's a good answer. But then we called our council, and he was very supportive, told us to come here and do this. Well, we got the letter, it was dated Friday, we got it Saturday, and the work was supposed to start today. So, I mean, community is about conversation. Come on, I mean, it's all we ask. So, that's, I guess, all I have.
Thank you. Anybody else? Brandon, comment, please.
So, as I stated in the email that I sent out, I typically I typically rely on the assessment letters for notifications for properties, and if you look at this block, mid-block, it must have been improved or extended in years past. So mid-block, the street and water, so the water main is newer on the north portion of Alexander. So and we dug up the south portion of Alex because of a water main replacement. So I sent notice and like I said, it was an oversight on my part for not giving them notice for the sidewalk portion because they're not getting assessed for the sidewalk. They didn't get an assessment letter. So as far as that goes, that was my mistake on not notifying them of the sidewalk being put in. But if you look at Alexander, the reason that I wanted to extend Alex's sidewalk. I mean, it either had to go out completely or extend it to ICOF. And, with the way it's drawn in, the intentions are for the sidewalk to go up to the walking path on the northeast corner there. And then it would tie into Fisher Avenue eventually with other improvement projects. So, like I said, I regret that the notices weren't sent out. But I do feel it is the right decision for the community as a whole to have that sidewalk there. If you look at the main arteries of that area, you got North Broadway, Alex is kind of centered, and then Barrett. So anybody in that area could hypothetically walk east or west about 2 to 3 blocks and be on a sidewalk and then be connected to the other walking paths. So that was where I was coming from on the sidewalks for extending it to the to the north a block. So, you know, it depends. Sidewalks are a hard conversation. You know, we sat in here a month and a half ago with people on Houston, upset that there wasn't going to be sidewalks on both sides of the street. So, I think it's our responsibility to evaluate the situation, and it's, you know, I would be open to conversations on adding sidewalk to both sides of the street, but you got to be careful about letting property owners decide which blocks it goes on, because that's how you end up with sidewalks that lead to nowhere. And, you know, and that's the part of the RFP that we're going to be requesting for engineering services for a CIP plan, is to do a good evaluation of town on traffic counts, and, you know, put a sidewalk plan together so that the improvements will go alongside with the study that's done. So we don't have that yet, but that's another goal that we're moving towards too. So, like I said, I do apologize for not notifying you guys. It was an oversight on my part. There's nothing I can do about it now, but I do apologize you didn't get notice, so.
So as it sits currently, the thing that concerns me is, okay, if the city decides to put this sidewalk in, and then against the homeowners, what their wishes, and then eventually this, like Brandon said, the sidewalk is going to try to meet its way up to Barrett, so it's all connecting, right? But my concern is what if, you know, people, you know, once Brandon comes and goes, and us council comes and goes, and then the opportunity to put the sidewalk in the future, and the council says, well, if the residents don't want it, we're not gonna put it in. And so these folks here got the short end of the stick. So either, I think as a city, we need to have a hard, fast rule on sidewalks are going in, or, because I don't want these guys to have to suffer of getting a sidewalk in, and then a few years down the road, we go up the street, and then we decide not to put a sidewalk in to connect everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you can decide, and that's one of the reasons that we're talking about having this comprehensive plan. But unfortunately, this council can't bind the council of 2040 or 2042. But having a comprehensive plan regarding the streets and the sidewalks could be a good lighthouse or marker for future councils. But it's not like it's in the charter. I mean, I guess you could put it in the charter, but that really isn't the purpose of a charter.
So north of Eichhoff on Alexander, there's no sidewalks there to connect to the trail, correct?
No. So once you get to Eichhoff, there's no sidewalk.
So what I'm looking at is, let's say you do a comp plan and decide where sidewalks to go in Alexandria, they recommend a sidewalk down in the future. Can't there be a discussion then about tying in those 4 to 5 owners plus all of Alexandria all the way up to the bike trail and do it all at once?
You could, yeah. So
But then the assessment would then fall on the homeowners at that point, correct?
Well, we have a sidewalk fund, but I don't know how healthy it is. I mean,
Yeah,
it's for damaged sidewalks. This is brand new,
So-
but
yeah.
It's probably fair to say that right now, these homeowners will not be assessed for the sidewalk going in, correct?
Yes.
correct, yeah.
But in the future, if we decide to do that comprehensive plan, and we're gonna tie in these 4 houses along with every other house up the street, then they may be assessed for the
Right.
sidewalk at that time.
I mean, I think this is a hard one to make a decision on. I think like greater good also has to come into play when we talk about like the walkability of our town.
And I know that that's going to be part of the conversation when we do this comprehensive plan. But just looking on the map, that would complete the sidewalk that would then go to that park, right? So then, I'm just thinking about kids walking to the park in that neighborhood and things of that nature. Like, are those things that we consider as well? I mean, I think this is, I completely understand where the homeowners are coming from on this. But I wonder if this needs to be something that we think about this holistically as a town and as a community when we think about these things. And if we do a comprehensive plan in the future, as the mayor had mentioned, and tie in that walking path going up further, then is that an additional cost that you wouldn't be having at this point if it was put in now versus a couple of years from now? I mean, I guess those are things to weigh as well when considering this. I understand, and what I'm hearing from you mostly is that you were really frustrated with the lack of communication.
It's not even the cost, it's just
The lack of
yardage.
communication, yeah.
If you drove down that street, realistically, if you got a grant to do something like that, drive down that street, it's crazy. There's a curve going to this park.
Yep.
It's dangerous. You drive there, and if anything, if you have a grant, put a four-way stop there, so it's slower traffic for safety of people. I mean, people walk on the road all the time. They're gonna end up walking on the road anyway. But, drive down that road one time. It's scary, because you turn the corner and there's people coming this way and they're cutting in short, or there's people walking, and it's just like it catches you off guard, and in the winter, it's miserable. If there was a four-way stop, at least people would slow down. It's not, they just speed up when they get around that curve and just start gunning it.
So it would be probably more safe to have a sidewalk there?
No, it'd be safer to have a four-way stop.
Well, I mean,
Well, I mean,
I
the way
agree
you
with
made
that.
it sound was that there's people in the street and you're worried about that. I feel like a sidewalk would solve that problem.
I think,
I'm just looking at the map, that's why I'm asking these questions.
I don't mean to interrupt, but if you're really looking at that street logically and you talk about tying into the trail, you're on the wrong side of the road right now. Where he's putting it in, you're better off being on Tom Bedbroughton's side. Coming down, going around the curve on the outside, the wider part of the curve, and you'd also have a cul-de-sac you're going across to begin with, which is safe to clear, and then you're coming down to that corner, and I'm trying to think what street that is, that's, what street is that?
Is that
That's right
Fourth
up to the park.
Street?
But
It's Fourth Street.
the trail is on that side, going behind, what's the attorney that lives over there in the corner? But you could stay on the
There's
west side of the road instead of the east side, and circle around. You'd have a better path, you'd have a better sidewalk up to the pathway that's there. And at that pathway, going over to the park, there's already the cautionary signs are there and on the road that, so, it's a pathway for pedestrians. So at least people pay attention, they slow down there. Always you're gonna have to go, if you know Tom, or, John Bridgeford, you'll end up in front of his, where he lives right now, you'd end up in his driveway and then crossing that busy street at John's place. There's a better way to put this thing, that's just my opinion.
So my question for you, just because I do walk that
Okay, good.
every day, and
Thank you.
yeah. So when you're saying you want to continue it on
Yeah.
to Barrett, are you saying then you would turn on Eichhoff, or you would continue on across Alexander
Continue on Alex to Evergreen.
to then that next part?
Yeah, and then, if you look to the south of where we're at
Yeah.
right now, there's sidewalk down the east side, the whole way from Central. So that's why I chose to stay on the east side, so we would cross Eichhoff, continue around the curve, and then transition to Evergreen once we got there.
But that older section of Alex where you put the storm sewers in, the water mains in, there's sidewalks on both sides.
Yeah, but if you look to the
Oh,
block to the
I get
south.
going past Bob's Wayset's place, I get going, heading south from
Yep.
there, it's not, that's true, there's not sidewalks. And there's a quasi-school building there, but,
I mean,
there's-
you either gotta transition at Fourth or at Evergreen. And, there's already there's already sidewalk in on the east side, that's why I chose to stick to the east side there, so.
And can I just ask for clarification, when you said that you felt that intersection was dangerous, are you referring to the Fourth Avenue North intersection?
That would be ICOF.
The ICOF,
Well, the
okay.
only reason, we've talked about this many times, if you walk the neighborhood, you know what it is, that, Alexander Street is a freeway from,
It is.
what is it, Central Avenue, all the way around the curve, and people just pick up speed coming down that road all day long. And they get to that curve, and that's where Renee's talking about scary. That curve, if you're not paying attention, I mean, we're used to the neighborhood. And we go around there a little gingerly, but then you have people that are parked there on both sides, and then you have, somebody walking their dog, and Sullivans are out with their dog, there's two of them and their little dog, and all of a sudden, boy, you're coming around the corner, somebody else. We're surprised there hasn't been something happen, either at that intersection or around that curve. I mean, that's off topic for the sidewalk thing, but just as a safety
Yeah,
feature.
I was just curious.
I know. It's gonna extend this sidewalk.
Okay,
Are you extending the sidewalk on the other side as well?
No, the west sidewalk is not gonna be there anymore.
Oh, you're taking that out completely?
Yeah.
Oh, good for them.
so is it necessary to put sidewalk in? Can that be tabled for further discussion down the road? I mean, you got street store, but we've put sidewalks in before without street reconstruction.
Yeah, I mean, we could stop mid-block. We've already had a public hearing for the stuff that's going into the south, so.
I mean, according to the form, the Crookston will take no official action on this item tonight, but I'm just wondering, can we
Well, the
slow it
construction
down?
The construction starts Wednesday, so I know we're not supposed to take any official action in a public forum, but I mean, we gotta figure something out.
Well, the sidewalk south of where we're talking about these folks is going to be replaced, correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
And is that all the way to the park?
yes, from the park to where the road will be rehabbed. It's right in the middle of the block. It's about 400 feet north of the park there.
Okay,
Yeah, so it goes from here.
From
and it
Fourth
loops around,
up
and then it ends like drastically there.
yeah.
How long do you anticipate that this construction, whether it be sidewalks, roadway, or both, will go on?
I mean, if they get in there with dry weather, it'll be a 2-week project probably. Yeah, if they're able to stay there with good weather, they should be in and out of there in a couple weeks.
And is there a particular time when the sidewalk has to go in or not go in? Could it be last? Could it be first?
I mean, it's better if they can do all their gravel and prep work at the same time. 'Cause they'll pull all the sidewalk, which there's not sidewalk there. I mean, they could. So they're gonna have to do the curb. So the company that's doing the curb work will be doing the sidewalk work, so it'll have to be at least 3/4 of the way into the project, probably, Rich, right?
What's the frontage on most of those homes that are affected? Say from the house,
I don't know that right offhand.
I guess just, they were kind of caught off guard with this and, and I hear where they're coming from. We've been down this road before with sidewalks and I don't know if we can slow the process down is what I'm getting at and reevaluate whatever is gonna be decided up there.
I mean, if we truly do intend to take this sidewalk all the way up to wherever it's gonna go, I feel that at that time, there's gonna be probably more people in here saying what they wanna say. So that's what I'm saying, is the city.
We have to make a decision.
Yeah, we need to, I understand we can't decide or say what councils ahead of us is gonna do. But like I said, they could have this very thing brought before them and they say, you know what, no, we're not gonna do it. Nix it, and everybody votes for it that we're not gonna do it. And these 4 houses just got a sidewalk in with anticipation of that sidewalk going to the end of the terminus, so I mean, I think it's upon the city to say, listen, sidewalks in a greater good for the community, and we're gonna do it no matter what the community says, you know.
Well, I think a greater good of the community, and I think that we're being strategic, and yes, we can't foretell what the Council of 2040 is gonna look like, but we can do, and what I think we're in process of doing is doing an overhaul of like studying all of the streets and seeing how we can make our city more walkable. And I think this also kind of comes back to ultimately at the end of the day, what we're looking for, right, is creating a community that people want to be in and want to buy houses in and do those types of things.
That's why I think instead of doing it in short pieces on a sidewalk, it has to be the whole thing, so we can get it done.
I think in general, absolutely, that makes sense. I think in this particular case, because they have the grant to actually pay for the sidewalks, it makes sense for what's happening. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, as we go through and do the initial study of all the streets and sidewalks in the city, maybe we do larger scaled things. But I think at this time, what I'm seeing and understanding from what Brandon shared is that this is something that wouldn't be assessed to the residents, but is part of a larger plan.
I'm also concerned about hearing that our constituents feel that these projects devalue their property. And I'd like to know how that happens. It would seem to me making a neighborhood more walkable would make that neighborhood safer and more valuable. So is it true that doing projects like this devalue homeowners' properties? Can somebody?
Well, I don't think we could say that right now.
Yeah.
You'd have to do an empirical study and to see. I don't know that any neighborhoods in Crookston have been devalued over the last, say, 10 years where sidewalks have been put in, but I don't have the data to support that.
Right.
One of the things that I think is important is, let's assume the notice had gone out on time. This discussion that you're having tonight would have happened 2 weeks earlier. You're in the same position now as you would have been had the notice gone out properly.
No, I understand that. But like I said, I just want to be consistent, and I want councils in the future to be consistent, and I don't know how to do that.
Well, what you're experiencing now, and I think Brandon can also talk to this is what has happened with councils throughout the history of Crookston. They've taken positions, we're gonna take sidewalks in. No, we're not gonna do sidewalks.
And I think that's where we're at this point, where like even in my neighborhood, you have 5 houses that have sidewalks and then the rest of us don't. And as a mom, I want to say if my kids want to walk down the road to their friend's house, I would rather have them do that on a sidewalk than on the road, especially in the winter. So again, when we talk about greater good and thinking about those things as a community, is this something that we just allow everybody to make their own decision on a sidewalk, and then some areas are safer than others? I mean, it's hard to do this, and I know these are not easy decisions, and that's why as elected officials, we have to make them. But at the end of the day, if this is optional, then we're gonna have this patchworked city issue that we've already experienced for the last 20 years, and it's very evident if you go to any neighborhood at this point.
And I get it. I just wish when we did sidewalk projects, the whole thing would get done till we get them to where they want to go.
Absolutely, and that makes sense, but financially, is that realistic?
Well,
You know,
Yeah.
it's a hard decision, either way, at the end of the day.
So where do we go from here? Nothing?
I like what Lynn said, the ones downtown, like, people are gonna break their ankles downtown walking. Once you use the grants to fix up the ones you have.
We actually are in process with the downtown corridor, and that's actually something that's in the planning process right now.
Are you fixing the sidewalk that's already there?
Yes, it's all.
On the east side,
Okay.
yes, yep. And, you know, this is where it's really hard. You know, I've said this a few times to different people around town. you know, it's really hard in this 2 years that I've been doing public work director duties. It is really hard to do my job when I have absolutely no policies to fall on. And I wish I had time to just go through and revamp policies, but you know, with being short-staffed and trying to fill in the voids, I'm getting the day-to-day stuff done, and not getting these residents their notice is kind of upfront. Of how busy I've been over the last 2 years trying to get we had high water that put me behind for 6 months, and it's just, when we really, really need to get policies in place, like Delane said, that, you know what, I know you don't agree with the sidewalk, I know you want a sidewalk, but this is our policy. This is why we're doing it. It's not my decision. It was an evaluation of the city, and I've gotten put in so many hard places in the last 2 years because of this. It makes it really hard to do your job.
So, I agree with what Brandon's saying. That's why I think we need to fix that.
You can't do it all at once.
And sooner than later, get a policy in place of what we're gonna do. So this, like I said, so once we have this policy, future councils can't decide. It's basically gonna be, some areas want a sidewalk, some areas don't. It's gonna go back and forth forever until we develop a policy as a city saying, this is what we're gonna do no matter what.
And just so you understand, we have started to engage in that you're gonna see policies come up for purchasing, for travel. This should certainly be the next on the list. There are 3 that are ripe to be brought to you. They're in final review by department heads. We've been working on those. We understand that. And if this is a policy you want next in the list, it can be there. But you'll see 3 within a month. And it makes sense. And then the burden would be on the future council members to change the policy. Right
Or
now,
adhere
there
to
is
it.
no policy.
Well, and I think there's something to be said about policy providing direction, especially as elected leaders coming off and on boards and, maybe brand new to really understanding. I think policy is really important for helping them navigate the way the city is trying to go strategically, especially.
Well, it addresses situations like this. Policies are, here's what we are deciding to do. If you're gonna change that policy, it takes an act not to do it.
Yeah.
Again, it can't bind, but the presumption is you follow the policy unless there's a reason not to, for policy reasons, not individual cases.
Right.
Okay,
They can move forward on it.
thank you. Chad, is there anybody on the phone bridge, please? Thank you.
Agent logged in.
He's already here.
Agent logged off.
Okay, we have a presentation tonight from Marty, Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council. My name is Marty Seifert. I am with the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities through Flaherty and Hood. Crookston's been a longtime member and supporter of the coalition, so we thank you for that. We're made up of 109 rural cities, all outside the metro area, and we take our marching orders from elected officials, mainly mayors and city council members and some administrators. Our conference, by the way, will be this week in Thief River Falls. It's down the road, so if any of you are able to come, we still have room for registration, and there's a little information inside this packet that I gave you before the meeting. Real quickly, I'm just gonna try to pound 50 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound bag. The sidewalk thing was interesting because in Marshall, we had this when I was a little kid, and they actually appointed a special commission to deal with it. So some elected officials, staff were resources but not voting members, and they had some citizens, and they figured it out. So maybe want to think about a special commission on sidewalks like we did, and then they brought it to full council for consideration. So maybe think about that a little bit, and there might be one solution, just for some guidelines. On the coalition, I did print out a special Crookston-only printout for you inside there, the bar graph. We lobbied very heavily at the instruction of our board to work on local government aid, both the reform of the formula and new money. Crookston came out extremely well. You're going to be getting permanently $400,000 to $500,000 of new money to work with in your local government aid in the next year, which I think is very helpful, obviously, with all the needs that you have in the community. Keeps your levy down, allows you to help pay for some of those things that you have to do. The different colors are just the proposals that were out there, but the final outcome is in the conference committee on the far right, the gold colored bar. So you're going, I think you might be getting more LGA than you ever have before. We've really had a lot of cuts back about 20 years ago, and we're happy to report that you'll have a lot of resources in this regard. I'm just going to point out real quickly the chart that says final outcomes. On the left-hand side are the goals that the board of directors gave us to work on. LGA, obviously, the formula was fixed, and the increase was 80 million. We lobbied for 150, which was kind of the wish list, but you're in elected office, you know not everybody gets what they want, so we tried our best. On the environment, we ended up with a good chunk of money, 80 of the 90 for PSIG grants, 87 of the 91 for water infrastructure fund, 41 of the 41 to match up to the feds. And then the lead line replacement fund, if you guys do have any lead lines in Crookston, this large appropriation is to help pay for lead lines, not only along like the curb and gutter, but also leading into the homes. So you don't have little old ladies with limited incomes and Social Security having to pay for this themselves and making you the bad guys. I testified twice in committee on this. We worked very hard on this, and we're gonna have more money appropriated as time goes on. We're gonna be lobbying for this for quite a few years. On childcare, we only had $900,000 in the facilities grant program, but we did get more than we asked for the DEED childcare grant program. And I think you have probably a childcare crisis like all the rural communities do. This isn't about deregulating our way out of it or funding our way out of it. There has to be kind of a blending of both. Minnesota is an outlier when it comes to regulatory requirements. And we're trying to get our arms around the things that make us outliers to make it easier for those in-home cares and those daycare centers to operate, but still keep the children safe. On the backside, workforce and housing, we end up with a variety of dollars for broadband, for BDPI, which is an only rural program, for business expansion on the public side. If you need a business in your community needs a sewer line or a service road or a water line, this helps pay for that so the community doesn't have to pay for it themselves. And then finally on transportation, I know this doesn't impact Crookston because you fall in the 5,000 above category, but for the first time, cities under 5,000, I think you're probably the only city in Polk County that's over 5,000. I'm trying to think of, well, it's
East Grand.
Okay, so East Grand. All those little cities that I drove through on the way here previously did not get any money from the gas tax because it's in the Constitution. So 59% of your gas tax dollar goes to the trunk highway fund, 29% roughly goes to the counties, and then 9% goes to cities of 5,000 above. But all those little cities were left out. And the coalition, of course, is made up of big and small cities, and we want to make sure that there were some dollars there for them on a permanent basis. But we did get $13 million a year for the larger cities, which you folks fit into, that goes into the formula. Corridors of commerce are those thoroughfares like Highway 59, 71, Highway 2 that connect Minnesotans with each other. We did some formula upgrades. I think you remember about 5 years ago, Hennepin and Wright County got 98% of the corridors of commerce funds, and the other 85 counties got 0. So our job is to try to prevent that from ever happening again and making sure that the rural cities do get that money. With that, there are some dollars available for public safety aid that your police department can access, and I'm going to just leave that with you. Every city is eligible for those dollars. You can't use it for things like tactical vehicles and tear gas. I didn't think you were probably doing that anyway. And then there is a save the date in here. Summer conference is coming up this week, Wednesday through Friday. We'd love to see all of you there. It's close by. We try to move that conference around. Last year we were in Red Wing, this year we're in Thief River Falls. We don't want to just keep it in one part of the state so everybody has an opportunity to attend. If you do attend one of the 3 days, I'd recommend Thursday. That's the biggest day of kind of the meat of the conference. Questions you might have, Mr. Mayor, members of the council?
I have a couple questions. So the 1 million for deed child care grant, it seems like the issues that we've really been having as far as child care is concerned is on top of just the regulation piece of it, is it seems like there isn't anybody to come up here and to do the necessary walkthroughs or things of that nature. And we saw that most recently with, is it All Children, All Kids? Where they needed a walkthrough in order to get a funding for food, right? Those are the types of things, the barriers that were, because the people who are there are in the cities. What are we doing about that? Is this part, can this funding go towards that? Has there been conversation about how they're better supporting the rural areas for those types of things?
Yeah, what we've been pushing for is a decentralization, so the health department doesn't have all the bureaucrats in the cities, and then they're like, someone has to groan and say, I have to drive 7 hours to go to East Grand or whatever. So what we're trying to do is get it regionalized so they have people that are more empowered on the local basis to do these things. And maybe even have the counties empowered to just say have their health inspectors or their department folks do these things. You don't need someone from the state to come down and do these things. They're very capable people in western Minnesota. I live in Marshall. The other thing we're working on too is the training requirements. We've had rural daycares that have had to close for a day and then drive to the Twin Cities or St. Cloud for their training, which is the same thing every year. They could go online and hear the same thing that they do year after year, and it would save a day of closure. There's just things like what you're mentioning and these things that just make kind of the words you never hear in St. Paul, common sense, to try to streamline these things. So I will definitely take note of it. And we do have discussions like these at our conference, and there are lawmakers at the conference, so if you have an opportunity to weigh in, I'll certainly pass it on, but it's a good kind of one-on-one to have at those conferences too.
So also the conversation about the funding for quarters of commerce, I know that we're in the process of doing the Highway 2 corridor in the next couple of years, and that's going to be quite a bit of money. Is there funding that would be appropriate for that as well?
Yeah, if they fall into the formula, they try to spread it out now more than they did before. 2 is one of those, and honestly, there's not a ton of roads up here that qualify for it, so I'm guessing they're gonna get a lion's share of that. And I'm trying to think what district number, are we in District 1?
I believe
For
so.
DOT districts? The DOT engineer. 2. The DOT engineers will be able to talk about that, and the folks in this room obviously can weigh in on that when you see those DOT folks. I don't know if you have a liaison to your district engineer, but it is a good check-in to do that, to just have someone do a call to them and say, hey, are these dollars here? Do we need to get on Mark Johnson to push the envelope?
Okay, and then my last question is, there's a new formula for distribution of the LGA. When we talk about like unmet need, what does that mean by unmet need plus the aid adjustment plus the previous LGA?
Yeah, the unmet need, let me look at what do we have? It's on the back side of the Crookston handout. So you're in the medium one. This was something Bradley Peterson worked on. The gap between cities' need and ability to meet the need. So that's the tax base that's calculated for, a lot of it has your property wealth. And the needs there's a baseline of what you provide for services. The unmet need factor was moved up. So your tax capacity, if you take a look at that need formula that's kind of above there, then there's the second one that's a distribution one. The unmet need was updated. It usually did through county assessors and so forth. But the unmet need that they did on this one, I think helped the rural area more so because our averages are below wealth on the Twin Cities. So they get LGA in Minneapolis and St. Paul. It's kind of a misnomer that we're the only ones that get it. But the share in the 7-county metro versus the so there's 7 counties in the metro, there's 80 non-metro counties. Our share will go up, and we're at 2/3 right now. So that unmet need factor has a lot to do with your property wealth or lack thereof. There's a lot of gleaming buildings, Mall of America. You drive into the metro, a lot of these rural cities don't have that.
Thank you.
And just to add into that, the reason the coalition is very important, because I know everybody belongs to the league and they say the league will handle this. The league has every city in the state of Minnesota as a member. When things like these formulas are talked about, we can be in the room and say, we need to do this for Crookston and East Grand and Thief River Falls, et cetera. The league has Minneapolis and Bloomington, Edina, some of these cities don't get any LGA. White Bear Lake, 0, Minnetonka, 0. So in the leagues there, they're kind of conflicted a little bit because they have to look out for everybody, and it's very difficult to come up with a formula that is an advocate for your community. So that's why we're there to bully our way in and make sure that you're treated fairly. Other questions? I'm gonna head over to Red Lake Falls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. This brings us to the agenda. Does anyone wish to add or remove anything from tonight's agenda?
Your Honor, under the regular agenda, item 9.10 is a revised resolution regarding the approval of the Greater Minnesota Legacy Grant application for the Crookston Parks and Rec. So I've placed a revised copy in front of everyone, and I've updated the council packet online to reflect those changes.
Okay, thank you.
Touch a little bit.
I think I need a motion first,
Yep.
correct? We have a motion to approve tonight's
So
amended
moved, Your Honor.
agenda. Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Don. Thank you. Discussion, Corky.
Mr. Mayor, yes. We drafted a resolution for this particular matter. After the drafting of the resolution, it came to our attention that the corridor needed additional facts in our resolution, so we created the newer resolution. You can read them in conjunction with one another, but the one that will be at 9.10 is the template provided by the corridor and the trails.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to,
You already
oh, I
have
already
motion,
have that,
just roll
sorry.
call.
Roll call, please.
Menard,
Aye.
Hibna,
Aye.
Dirty,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Kressel,
Aye.
Glatt.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. This brings us to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? I have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I'll make that motion, Your Honor.
I got Joe and
I'll
Clayton.
second it.
Roll call, please.
Menard,
Aye.
Hibna,
Aye.
Dirty,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Kressel,
Aye.
Glatt.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We have a public hearing tonight. Ashley, please.
Yes, Your Honor. The public hearing is regarding the interim ordinance prohibiting the commercial sale, testing, manufacturing, commercial cultivating, commercial growing, transportating, delivery, and distribution of cannabinoid products in the city of Crookston.
Okay, I'll open this public hearing. Anyone wish to address the council, please come to the podium, state your first and last name and address, please.
Your Honor, if I might, I'd like to just give the council a little briefing on this particular matter. There's come to our attention a number of items that are of concern to people. What I've prepared for your consideration tonight, and it is your consideration, is a resolution directing this administration to prepare a proposed ordinance regarding a moratorium on the certain items within the recent legislation. Now, one, it cannot and does not, the ordinance, a proposed ordinance, does not prohibit those things which are specifically allowed in the legislation. Such things as possession of 2 ounces of cannabis or marijuana. And you should note that we are using the definition that anything over the 0.3% of the THC will be defined as cannabis or marijuana. Anything under that, we will be talking about hemp. Okay? So, first and foremost, the legislation, which is quite extensive, and which we have talked about, our local provider here in Crookston, I've talked with him about the new legislation. 2 ounces of marijuana with anyone over the age of 21 is allowed, cannot be affected by any moratorium should you establish one. The fact that you could have 8 plants within your home, 4 of which are flowering, 4 of which are not, cannot be affected by a moratorium ordinance should you enact one. In addition, such things as the medical cannabis. I've had contact and read some citizens saying that this would be affected by a moratorium. Absolutely cannot be and would not be. And in the moratorium, there is a specific exempting clause, have you read it, for medical cannabis. In addition, the edible products that are presently being sold here in Crookston, specifically exempted from any moratorium should you enact such a moratorium. In addition, reasons for the moratorium. It will allow discussion and study. It specifically says and directs the administration to engage in studying such issues as, can you walk down the street and smoke cannabis? Can you transport cannabis? There is some question about seeds. Can they be bought and sold? It's not clear. Those issues. In addition, we would study the fact that the city cannot impose its own individual tax on cannabis. We would study the fact that within the legislation, it specifically provides for municipal dispensary. That should be studied, so you're aware of that. Quite frankly, in contacting the League of Minnesota and other cities, this whole legislation is just in its infancy. It is not well known, not with specific directives. The Office of Cannabis Management has a 50-person committee, which is not completely established. They are directed by the legislation to provide model ordinances, to provide guidelines, to talk about the specific implementation. The reason for bringing it in front of you tonight is that on August 1st, sales will be commenced on Native American reservations. That product will be saleable and will be usable by citizens of the state of Minnesota. Just as one irony, understand that it cannot be bought and sold with the legislation now. It's expected to be able to be bought and sold by merchants or dispensaries on January 1st, 2025, but it can be given away for no remuneration. Cannabis, 2 ounces or less, to anyone over 21, can be given away. There are a lot of questions with this legislation. So I brought it for your attention and discussion tonight, but I think there's a lot of work to be done to help the city define what it's going to do in terms of ordinances. Do we have ordinances that need to be adjusted? If you have sales, when can it be sold? What kind of structures? Where relative to other businesses, to schools, to churches? Those kind of things need to be explored. So I brought it for your attention, for your discussion, and if you pass a resolution, it would direct the creation of an ordinance which I have listed for you at 9.11 If you do pass it, this would be the first reading tonight, and we can make adjustments if necessary. But it is a critical issue for the city, as all cities in the state. And I would urge us to study it, and if in fact things move more quickly than possible, if this ordinance is passed, it can be changed, adopted, rescinded as we get more information.
Thank you, Corky. Anybody else?
So I just want to clarify here real quick that what this does is just suggests the moratorium, and then the actual, like, meat of the moratorium is here.
That's correct. The
So this is
resolution.
voting for the moratorium.
The resolution would direct that there be an ordinance created for your consideration? Yes.
So the only thing the moratorium does is doesn't allow somebody to set up and sell within the city limits.
Well, that doesn't do that now. The statute does that. They can't sell without a license, and the licenses haven't yet been created or extended.
So the moratorium ultimately does what? I
It
mean,
does allow the city to review its ordinances, to set up and establish the how and when and where and why for the sales as they come down from the Office of Cannabis Management.
And day-to-day usage.
And yes, one of the things you would consider under the moratorium is, are you going to address, can people walk down the street and smoke cannabis? That's one thing as an example. Are you going to specifically enact an ordinance with smoking in public parks and buildings?
Maybe I'm not fully understanding, but if it's legal in the state of Minnesota, and we set up a moratorium, and somebody does walk down the street smoking marijuana, what can they be cited with? Breaking our ordinance?
Well, if we have an ordinance that establishes, let's say it's a petty misdemeanor, they can be cited for that.
Just
yes.
so they're gonna be cited for not following our ordinance?
Correct. Correct. If they
Not for smoking marijuana, just not for following our ordinance?
Well, smoking marijuana on a public street, let's say, yes, they would.
But they won't be cited for having marijuana?
No.
Just for not following our ordinance?
Yes,
As long as they don't have.
as long
over
as they
2
don't have
ounces.
more than 2 ounces, as long as they don't
Granted,
violate
as long
the
as they're
statute.
following the state law.
Yes,
And it also prevents somebody from opening a business selling.
well, the state law would prevent that because they don't have a license. And those licenses will come from the state when the Office of Cannabis Management gets that enacted and sets up the criteria for licensure.
And I'm hearing that's about 18 months out
Well,
before they even
From
start.
what I've heard and read, because I spent last night reading all 319 pages of this, so,
surprised you got through it in one reading.
well, yeah. It was, I think they're hoping within 12 to 18 months. Now, the Office of Cannabis Management is the one that will provide the license, but they have the Board of Advisory, but the Board of Advisory is just to give recommendations. So from my understanding, those are two separate things. So even if the Board of Advisory is not completely set up with all 50 members, the office could start providing licenses because they're two separate,
That's accurate, they could.
yes. Now, will they? We don't know, but they could.
But the 18 months is a goal. It could be shorter. It could be longer. We just don't know. There are so many unanswered questions about this, other than what's specifically within the legislation, which is permissible.
So I think what I've heard from constituents so far and their concern is being able to use it recreationally within their homes. And-
Absolutely permissible under the statute.
Right, so what, it's 4 flowering plants and 4 plants that are not flowering. They can have up to 8 plants, correct?
Correct.
I think some of the questions that they would also ask is like, okay, so how do you get said plants, right? Granted, it sounds like seeds could be sold, right? And there's gonna be specific, I think, or limitations, I have it somewhere, as to how those are sold, how they're labeled, all that good stuff. But my question is, say somebody doesn't buy seeds and plants them, but wants to purchase plants for their usage at home, wouldn't this moratorium then make that something that's citable by transporting those plants?
That's an open question, but one, is it transporting for retail sale or for personal use, and how do you transport them? Do you transport them in a trunk of a vehicle that's not accessible? Certainly in arguments you can do that. There are certain requirements the Department of Agriculture has set out about transporting within the vehicle in terms of the packaging, but the plants themselves, certainly arguable that if you put them in a trunk of a vehicle or a non-accessible to a driver or a passenger, you would be able to transport those plants for your personal use. You asked about the seeds.
Right.
The Department of Agriculture said a retailer can sell the seeds. We're checking on what is the definition of a retailer. Is it a retailer who needs a license under the statute, or is it a retailer who is in the business of selling the edibles and the liquids? Is that the kind of retailer that can sell them? Because the seeds themselves are not THE providers. It's the plant which grows from the seed. So that, again, is an open question about, is a retailer specific to marijuana, or is a retailer someone who can sell the edibles and the liquids? That's an open question.
I can understand the need for the moratorium, but I also want to make sure that whatever we enact in the moratorium also doesn't unduly harm individuals who are just utilizing it recreationally.
It
And
cannot.
and my concern is when you say no individual, right, or establishment, we're just gonna say no individual transporting or delivering or distributing cannabis, like if they're transporting a plant, does that put them in a citable situation?
I don't believe so, because I believe the language talks about transporting for sale or for a commercial purpose.
Right, but in your moratorium, it says no individual.
But it go on and read the whole thing, talks about transporting and then for commercial purposes.
Yeah.
Gotta read the whole article.
So who grants the license? The state, right?
The state will grant the
So
license.
even if we have a moratorium, and if a state grants a license to somebody within it, they can start selling within our,
If they grant them a license, yes, but they have to then abide by whatever ordinances we have in terms of where they sell, hours of sale, things like that. Yes, they can have a license as long as they register with the city and are in compliance with the city's ordinances.
I thought the moratorium would stop no matter what for, like you said, the 2 years. So I'm very interested in having a city-run dispensary. Because from my mind, the city of Crookston would actually get some revenue from the selling of this, where we could stick into police, fire department, and streets
And
and
lowering
things
the
like that.
taxes.
What?
And lowering the taxes, the tax
Right.
levy.
Yeah.
That's certainly a possibility,
But-
yes.
But if having this moratorium doesn't even stop that, if somebody goes and gets the license before we do, then,
That's why it's important that if this is something that the council wishes us to do, we need to start acting immediately. And a moratorium will help us go through that process as quickly as we can.
So, how do I word this? Let's say the city is interested in having a municipal. Now, let's say someone is applying for a license to open up a dispensary in Crookston. Does whoever does the licensing in St. Paul, do they look at, well, Crookston is looking to have a municipal, will
yeah.
they stop the sale or the licensing of another individual?
Isn't it the city's purview on how many licenses are distributed?
Yes, the city is required, may be required to have one license because of our population. But if the city is saying we're going to, and that's a question to be answered, where we say if we are going to do a municipal dispensary, we're putting that out there right now, does that preclude anyone else if that's what the city wants? We don't know the answer to that, quite frankly. If it's treated like liquor, it could be, but that's not known yet. A municipal dispensary could be a very valuable source of income. Could be. Depends on how it's run, where it's located, all of those kind of things that need to be addressed. And
Yes, Corky. So just for the purposes of clarification, Section 3 of the moratorium on paragraph A, it says, "No individual, establishment, organization, or business may engage in the retail sale, wholesale sale, testing, growing, cultivating, manufacturing, transporting, delivery of, or distribution of cannabis products." Now, when I read that, that tells me that if I want to go and get a plant from the reservation and bring it home for my personal use, I could be cited because this does not clearly state for the purposes of resale.
And again, this can be, this is the first reading.
Right.
Can be changed.
So I want to make sure that that's clearly stated there. Perhaps retail and wholesale sale moves to the end of the sentence.
Certainly can be changed.
Okay.
I'd also like to clarify that if this is the first reading and we choose to change the wording, does that start us over in a first reading again at the next meeting?
Not necessarily.
If we amend this?
Yes, yes, it does.
I think I'm open for amendment on that. I think it's further clarification on this. Also, Corky, you mentioned earlier when we talked about that somebody could be cited for walking down the street smoking. I mean, it doesn't clearly note that here, so is that part of the state regulations or statutes
No,
already
I'm
that are
saying
assumption?
that's a question of, is it allowed or not?
Okay, so currently it can't be cited even with the moratorium.
Well, that's a question. What do our ordinance, I have not looked at every single ordinance about smoking in public and where. If you can't do it, smoke within 500 feet of a certain facility or 1,000 feet of a school, let's say, yeah, you could be cited if you were using there.
And does it clearly state that smoking is tobacco products, or does it just say smoking in general? The current statute?
The current statute does not address smoking.
At all?
And clearly is a word that's not appropriately used when you read this.
Right.
Not just the proposed moratorium, but the whole pieces of legislation.
Yeah.
I mean, instead of spending our time and effort on a moratorium of what you can't do during this, why don't we spend our time and effort making up an ordinance of what they can do and how to do it? And by that time,
The city doesn't need to make an ordinance about what you can do. That's what this legislation does. The city is only have the ability to limit certain things. It can't limit the amount. It
But
can't
it really
limit.
really doesn't limit anything because it's just not abiding by our ordinance, which is a misdemeanor. What's a fine for a misdemeanor? I mean, it's
90 days or I think $1,000 fine or both.
so.
I understand I understand why we're doing the moratorium. I get that part, but I am just uncomfortable with the wording in the current moratorium document.
Well, and I'm wondering too, the length of the moratorium, does it need to be, until some point a year and a half down the road? Or can we look at something, as Delane and I spoke earlier, like 6 months down the road? Take a look at.
So do a 6-month moratorium and then look at where we're at then, because I just don't want this moratorium just to say, okay, we got 2 years. Or the law says we can have up to a 2-year moratorium just because, and then we just drag our feet and then at the end of the 2 years, we really didn't do anything.
Answer your question first, Councilman Menard. No, you can have it be whatever length you think is appropriate. To answer your question, Councilman Clot, I don't think you're going to see city staff sitting on this. This is an important item for the city to consider. The horse is already out of the barn in terms of,
Right, August
is it
1st.
going to be allowed? Okay? That's out of the barn. The question now becomes, how will the city address this? Is this going to be an area where the city says, okay, we're going to apply or give 7 licenses? Or are we going to have a municipal dispensary that's the only licensee? That takes a lot of work. And I know from speaking with the city attorney and myself and staff, your directive on this is critical. How much time we spend. And let's be frank, there aren't a lot of experts around here. We're going to have to go to Colorado or Nevada and talk to people about how did you implement this? What did you do? But yeah, I mean, if the council says we'll pass the moratorium, but you're going to start working on it, administrative staff, that's what we're going to do.
Yep.
I agree, and I think like Tim and I were discussing, if we said first we go 6 months, and then if we see at the end of that 6 months, here, great, we got some traction going here, the city is looking into this, and this, then we can say, we'll do another 6 months, see how that goes. That's how I'd like to.
Certainly, there's the pro of doing that. The con is then you got to reenact it and takes a little bit more time. But that's a pro and con that you all decide. Administratively, we point out the pros, the cons, get you as much data as we can, but that's your decision. I can tell you that there are a number of cities who have enacted a similar moratorium. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. As you've all read, East Grand Forks has. I believe Foston and Bagley have. It's my understanding Duluth has. Again, doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong, but they did put that January 1, 2025, because that's what the legislation has laid out as the date that they wish to have this industry up and running. Could be sooner.
So is it fair to say that to get working on whatever the city wants to do, to have this done by December 31st of this year, that's roughly 6 months?
You know, I'd love to say yes.
I mean, either that or some.
But this is something that you could say to us as an administrative team. Because we have to look at fire. We have to consult with the fire department. What kind of buildings are they going to be looking at? What kind of requirements do they want? Our housing, our public works people, our building official. What are we going to require in terms of safety issues, health issues, construction? Where located? If it's a priority that you want addressed, the administrative team will do that. It's part of economic development, perhaps. What structures are available around town?
May I address the council?
Yes,
It's
it's a
Michelle
public hearing.
Christopherson, 723 Sunset Avenue. I too read the documentation. I think of 3 things. Based on the people that I have spoken with, your constituents here in the community of Crookston, their largest concern, I believe, is indeed transportation of this product at the legal limit of just under the 3.03%. I also read that the Office of Cannabis Management, along with the state of Minnesota, are expunging those misdemeanors. And so if we're going to be honoring or giving a citation that is indeed creating another misdemeanor, to me it seems as though perhaps that's a step backwards. And then lastly, I really appreciate the continued dialogue here, so I want to thank you for your continued thoughtfulness. But I also think about the law as itself that reads specifically if you stay in your own property, which I welcome that, and I understand based on what the city administrator Reynolds has provided. But the discussion that I continue to hear over the last 3 or 4 days in just the community that we do live in is specifically about the transportation, because Red Lake Nation is
opening up August 1. So there may not be lots of travel east, but just nonetheless, if that is an opportunity for someone to be pulled over because they are transporting this product, something for us, I think, to continue to discuss. Thank you.
And we only have control over the jurisdictional boundaries of Crookston, obviously.
I understand, but they would be coming from there to,
to get to my home.
yeah.
Right, but once you get into city limits, then it's our problem, and, you know, are we creating more of a, and then if we, like she said, if we do cite somebody for a misdemeanor, is it at the end of the day gonna be expunged anyhow?
I think the statute specifically talks about prior convictions, not present convictions.
I think the concern is criminalizing something that's just recently been decriminalized. I think that is, Michelle, would you say that would? Yes. What you're, and I think that would be my concern as well.
And I'm not sure decriminalize is accurate, but something that's being expunged was not the transportation, but the usage in the past. And it'll be interesting to see how quickly they get about that business and how they do it. I mean, I hope it's quick, but.
And I mean, it's the same thing with alcohol. It's, you can't drink in public. You can't openly be doing it on the sidewalk. That's, I mean, it is a criminal activity.
and
It's something that you can be cited for. Like, it's. Well, yeah, you can have it in the car, you can do it, but you can't be drinking on the sidewalk.
why-
walking
Right,
down
and
the street.
I think that's the argument, is the way that this moratorium seems to read is that even the transportation of it would be a citable offense, and that's where I think the concern really comes up from. I completely understand where we need to have more time to decide how we zone for a cannabis dispensary and what have you. I absolutely get that. But I also want to make sure that those who are utilizing cannabis are not somehow being fearful of, you know, just in transportation to and from their home. And I completely get not utilizing it in public, and I think there's like very clear stipulations as to where it should be located in your home and how those things are occurring, but we're still putting on here, and the way it's reading, I think there's some major concern about this is something that can be then enforceable in Section 5.
Does Polk County have a moratorium, does anybody know?
I don't think they have yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did, because they had a moratorium on the gummies and drinks.
They do not have a moratorium at this point.
So if they enacted a moratorium, then that means that like she said, somebody coming from Red Lake Reservation, once they enter Polk County, that would be against the.
Well, Delane, I think you'd have to also see what their moratorium actually states. And
Right.
that's part of the conversation right now, is what exactly is in the moratorium.
Right.
What will Polk County put in their moratorium? Will it be similar to this or not, is like gonna be up in the air until they make that decision.
And you can't just stop a car. You gotta have probable cause. You can't just say, stop, I wanna open your trunk.
Right, I get that, but I mean,
A lot of fallacies.
I mean, and this goes back to where we talked about the gummies. I don't know why it seems to be so hard to start an ordinance right away. Take the alcohol ordinance, remove alcohol, and put in THC and start from there. And just go with that ordinance. I mean, and then adjust it as needed. At least we got a starting point of where it needs to go. I had hoped, what I thought the moratorium was gonna do for us is to help us get a leg up on, to get a municipal dispensary going faster. So, for lack of a better words, so we don't have any competition at the beginning. So we have our own leg up on getting a municipal dispensary going before anybody else can get a foothold in the community for doing this. But it doesn't even sound like the moratorium does that.
Well, Corky, my question is on that is, so if we had an ordinance that it had to be municipally run, my understanding is once a license is given by the state, it then is sent to us and we can say whether it falls under certain licensing issues and then kick it back to the state. So if it was a municipal, we could kick it back and say it doesn't fall underneath those ordinances.
I can't answer that specifically. I cannot do that because I don't know what will be spit out of this Office of Cannabis Management. I don't know what they're gonna say about municipals. I don't know what they're gonna say in coordination with private. I just don't know that.
So, so also, we could start this moratorium and say till whatever, well, not whatever
You
date,
could
but
say- you
till
could-
January 1st, right?
It's the latest,
And
yeah.
then we can start working on it tomorrow.
We can
To
get as
Elaine's
much
point.
information as we can.
And then
If-
once we feel comfortable, we can lift it. It's not, we have to.
Right,
keep
it does, once this, if this is enacted, it can be rescinded and amended at any time following the appropriate procedures for rescinding or amending an ordinance. You can go 2 weeks. You can go
Okay.
17 months. Can be rescinded at any time, as any ordinance could be, or changed.
So what do we do as a council to let you guys know, and you and your staff, that we want to make this a priority to figure out how we run a municipal dispensary?
You can do a couple of things. One, you can just go, this is a priority, work on it. You
Okay,
can,
that would fall on, that discussion would fall under 9/11.
under the ordinance,
Okay, we
yes.
can-
This resolution that you're talking about here just
this is-
directs the administration to prepare an ordinance.
Yep, this is,
And anticipating that you may want to do that, I put it on so you would have your first reading tonight to hasten the process.
I just
But
wanted
if
to
we have a first
clarify.
reading tonight, then that would mean it would need to be in its current form.
Correct.
And I'm not comfortable with that.
I just wanted to clarify too, we are still under the public
Yeah,
hearing
this is still
portion
under
of
the
it. This
public
is not the
hearing.
resolution, so.
Right.
okay, anybody else regarding public hearing?
Hi, my name is Dr. Carrie Penna. I'm a native of town, and I'm really, I moved back just a couple of years ago after moving away to earn my doctorate in clinical psychology. And along the way, I learned a few things about the implications of the conversations happening here today. I have a question about whether anybody has considered the role of bias in forcing a moratorium that seems like most everybody in the room is questioning, what does it even accomplish? Besides increasing the anxiety of people that probably already have excessive anxiety. And I'm gonna just stop my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Reitmeyer, Crookston homeowner, and for anybody that doesn't know, we own the cannabis store in town. A couple things to consider is, first, does anybody around the room know what a spleeb is? Is that a word that anyone knows? It's the most popular way for young people to ingest marijuana. They mix it with tobacco. So you don't have an ordinance against smoking walking down the street, but so, you know, where's the line that now it has marijuana in it, and that's illegal? People come to our town as tourists. Is there going to be signage saying, you know, you're now within 1,000 feet of a church, you can't smoke anymore? These are all questions that I think should be answered so that you don't get in a situation where you're stopping people, you're writing them a misdemeanor ticket, it gets to a judge and he's just going to go, or even the attorney isn't going to bring it because it's not going to be meritorious in front of the judge. So these are things that we hope that we can figure out as we move forward here. You're thinking about running a dispensary yourself. I can understand that. It's been very popular in alcohol and everything like that. But just some numbers that are out there, you know, you're looking at $25 an hour or more for the lowest level person that you have serving customers. You got 2 or 3 of those going every hour. Then you got a boss over that that's making significant money. And then you probably have a boss over them that's making more money than almost anybody in Crookston. Those are the going prices to hire people to run an organization like this. So, or if you think you're going to hire people off the street, but people who are buying this product, the idea of a bud tender, interesting word, just like a bartender, but you know, they're very sophisticated people. They can tell you all the pluses and minuses of every.
There's obviously profit in it because that's why you're doing it.
And obviously, that's easy to say, but I'm just telling you that,
You're
make
not
sure.
You're not doing it as a public service, you're doing it to make money.
Exactly, but actually, we're doing it because we're agriculturalists and we're trying to improve the quality of people's lives. That's our main mantra.
That's debatable, whether this product improves the quality of people's lives or not. The fact is that it's legal right now, so it's, from the state of Minnesota, so I mean, it's debatable. I'm sure that, whether it improves the quality of people's lives by having this product out there. I'm more interested in, if we're gonna have it within our city, I want the city to benefit from it instead of somebody privately selling it from within the city limits.
And so if you do make your own, metro-owned thing, understand that there's gonna be people all around you, and there is gonna be a rush to the bottom at some time.
Right.
Things that are making money now are not going to make money. We already know this. Our lawyers are warning us, all of the groups that I'm in, people that are on this new council that are being formed, they're looking ahead. They've had experience in other states. And so just take that into consideration. I don't see it as the kind of money that maybe, I still live in a $40,000 house, So, but the big thing is about how you're going to enforce it, and that's what I wanted to bring up, is that like there's spleebs. This is a real common way for young people to take this product, and it's half cigarettes or half tobacco and half marijuana rolled into their own handmade joint. Are you going to have somebody on the street sort of like enforcing that, well, that smells more like marijuana than tobacco, and here's a ticket, and thank you for visiting our town? Any questions, or I'll get out of your way again?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I will close this public hearing. Okay, moving on. This brings us to the regular agenda.
Yes, Your Honor. Under the regular agenda, 9.01 is a resolution regarding the regulation of cannabis products and businesses within the city of Crookston.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So move, Your Honor.
Thank you. Don, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Henry. Discussion. Corky, please.
Well, this is what we've just been talking about. Are you going to pass a resolution that directs the city administration to proceed with an ordinance because you are interested in protecting the health and public welfare of the citizens? It's in the best interest of the city to adopt this so that we have time to explore and get data and information about what restrictions, if any, would be appropriate within what's allowed. As we discussed, certain things can't address. They're very well spelled out.
And this is for the moratorium, correct?
Correct.
And this moratorium is in here for 2 years?
No, it would be until January 1st, 2025.
Okay.
Approximately 18 months.
Listen, I don't know if I'm necessarily for the moratorium or not. I don't see the moratorium doing really anything except making it a misdemeanor for what's legal already by the state. Now, I would, if the administrator in the city feels they need some time to do what they need to do, I mean, I think maybe we can figure that out possibly in 6 months. I mean, instead of for a full January 1st, 2025, I'd like to go 6 months then and then see where we're at from there. I mean, is anybody else, I mean, what is anybody else's thoughts?
I don't know if it really matters 6 months or not. I think where you were getting at earlier was to make sure that we're not just being stagnant. So
Right.
maybe it's once a month. Is this, Corky, is this something that can be worked in once a month? We get an update of where you're at, what's going on?
Absolutely.
You know, so put the moratorium, we don't have to change that of what's in here, but then make sure that it's not sitting stagnant. That's kind of was your main goal in making it 6
Well,
months is to see what.
at first, but after looking at the moratorium, I'm like, I'm still puzzled on actually what it.
Just for clarification, in looking at the actual regulations in section 13, subsection E, it really is talking about us providing a moratorium on just like the business aspect of it. It's not personal use,
Right.
which is again why I was pushing for us making sure that it clearly states that this is not criminalizing individual use until we come up with some like better regulations when it comes to business practices. And I completely understand that because there is no direction at this point, and that makes complete sense to me. I think where and what I've heard from a lot of our constituents is it's really about the usage personally and not about the business aspect. And that's going to be for a very small group of individuals who are in that space, right? That are doing this as a commercial or
The
business.
city cannot affect the personal use that's
Right,
been
and
prescribed.
and that
in
is
the
what I was
statute.
just trying to clarify, but I also want that clarified in the moratorium. And I don't feel that the way it is written right now clarifies that.
And I think the moratorium will also give us additional time and so forth to look at it seriously.
I mean, to look at what? I mean,
Well, the city would be looking at it.
we still can't stop, from.
No, this is for the business.
This is
of-
business commercial
But I
use.
mean, the thing is, that we're talking about, we wanted to state that what's legal is legal, but I mean, it's legal. Like, I mean, why would we need to restate that it's legal?
Right.
I don't think that's what it is. It sounds like from what the moratorium looks like and the way you read it, is it looks like it's also saying the transportation by individuals.
Right.
And much of that will be decided by the courts,
Yeah.
if not all of it, and this committee, the Office of Cannabis Management. Many laws you can say with some clarity, this is what it means. This you cannot do with certainty.
Further discussion.
I guess I won't, I'll only go for a 6-month moratorium. I won't go for the full time if we do it.
So do we?
There's a motion and second, you can
Yes.
call for a vote, you can have it amended, but then, if you amend, that's fine. Then we'll have the first reading next time. That's completely up to all of you.
I think we take a vote.
If we have the reading next time, that obviously comes after August 1st.
Correct.
So how does that affect us of waiting till after August?
We don't
1st?
have anything in place. Now, there aren't any licenses at this point for businesses. When they're gonna come out, who knows? How it affects us with somebody walking down the street and smoking cannabis? We don't know. We'll be talking certainly with law enforcement about what is their objective, what are their thoughts about how we do this? What about smoking in public areas? If it says tobacco, is this tobacco? I mean, it's wide open, and it's,
This vote.
I think we go forward with it. We can always shorten the timeline as needed.
They can be changed at any point.
Yes.
Exactly.
we just
Yeah,
have to
it
do
says
the appropriate steps to amend or revoke the ordinance if you pass it.
Right.
Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Menard,
Aye.
Hibna,
Aye.
Jurdy,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Kressel,
Aye.
Platt.
Nay.
Motion carries. Moving on.
And it is my understanding that you wish this to be the high priority on the administrative team in seeking out alternatives, not alternatives, but do we implement a municipal dispensary? We also talk with our department heads, we talk with the folks here at Illuma and the clinics and how that works.
Well, it's good to have whatever your time schedule's going to be, is to include whatever.
But do it as quickly as we
quickly
can.
as possible, right?
And updates. I think
Yes.
And
updates are
updates, yeah.
very important.
Yep.
Okay,
9.02 is a resolution regarding the Crookston Airport Managers Agreement.
thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this
So
resolution?
moved, Your Honor.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Joe?
Joe? Thank you. Discussion.
Yes,
Corky,
we
please.
have an airport manager, Lowell Miller. He's done it for 20 years. He and I have negotiated a contract to bring before you for your consideration. I indicated to him that this is what he has asked for. It's based on a 3% per year increase and some other abilities, but he is agreeable to this. A 3-year agreement.
Further discussion. Hearing none, can I roll call, please?
Menard?
Aye.
Hidma?
Aye.
Jurdy?
Aye.
Fisher?
Aye.
Briggs?
Aye.
Cavalier?
Aye.
Kressel?
Aye.
Platt?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 9.03 is a resolution regarding the fixed-based operators agreement.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Don. Thank you. Discussion?
Fixed-based operator at the airport allows Lowell Miller to run his airplane repair, parts, selling fuel, which he has done for an equal length of time. It's our agreement that we receive a certain dollar amount percentage of the sales. I believe it's 10 cents a gallon for his operation there. And it kind of goes in line with the manager's agreement.
All
And
right,
just so my fellow council members know, these items were all discussed at the Airport Commission meeting last week.
And they were
agreed upon.
unanimously, I believe that's correct,
Unanimously agreed
approved.
upon, yes.
So my understanding is that he's renting out a portion of the airport for his own personal business? Is
That's
that
correct, yes.
And that we're just getting a percentage of his fuel sales?
Well, he gets to use certain hangars there for his business, and we get a 10 cents per gallon fee for this fuel that he sells.
Okay, further discussion. Hearing none, can I roll call, please?
Menard?
Aye.
Hidma?
Aye.
Jurdy?
Aye.
Fisher?
Aye.
Briggs?
Aye.
Cavalier?
Aye.
Kressel?
Aye.
Platt?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 9.04 is a resolution regarding the commercial agricultural hangar lease.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
I'll make that motion, Your Honor.
Thank you, Clayton. Is there a second?
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
I think I got Henry.
It was a close tie.
It's close. Discussion.
Yes, what this is Dan Flying Service operates out of a hangar at the airport. He's rented for a number of years. This is a proposed 10-year agreement, but there is an out on either party's part with written notice. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, of 90 days. And the rate has been increased, and it's agreeable. Also in front of the Airport Commission, which approved it unanimously.
All right, thank you. Further discussion. Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Menard?
Aye.
Hidma?
Aye.
Jurdy?
Aye.
Fisher?
Aye.
Briggs?
Aye.
Cavalier?
Aye.
Kressel?
Aye.
Platt?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 9.05 is a resolution regarding the Crookston Airport Maintenance and Operation Grant Contract 1053258.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Henry. Discussion.
Yes, this is a grant from the state to allow us and help us in our operations of the airport. Again, it has been in front of the Airport Commission, and they are agreeable to it. We get money from the state.
All right, thank you. Further discussion. Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Menard?
Aye.
Hidma?
Aye.
Jurdy?
Aye.
Fisher?
Aye.
Briggs?
Aye.
Cavalier?
Aye.
Kressel?
Aye.
Platt?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 9.06 is a resolution regarding the general records retention schedule for the Minnesota cities.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Thank you, Joe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Clayton. Thank you. Discussion?
In 2021, a group of city clerks and others reviewed the record retention policies presently then existing and made a recommendation that all cities follow and update their retention of records policies. Ours hadn't been updated for quite a while. If I'm not mistaken, 96?
95.
95, off by a year. It's time.
All right, thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Menard.
Aye.
Hibma.
Aye.
Jerdy.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Briggs.
Aye.
Cavalier.
Aye.
Kressel.
Aye.
Platt.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 9.07 is a resolution regarding the change order number 1, Central Park Campground improvement.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Got Clayton and Don, thank you. Discussion.
Change order necessary because we didn't have the bathhouse, so we had to do some changing around down in the park campgrounds. I think it was $6,500 approximately. 6,000. It's necessary to do that because we didn't do the bathhouse, but you'll see later on, we're gonna try to get that bathhouse.
And electrical involves what? Please? Maybe I missed it reading.
Without the new bathhouse, with the new bathhouse, if we would have done it in conjunction with the work we're doing, some of the electrical controls for the campsites would have been inside the building. And since we didn't have the new the new bathhouse going up, we're moving them to the outside, so they had to be upgraded so they're weatherproof and waterproof and all
Gotcha.
that good stuff, so.
Thank
that's
you.
what I'm up to.
Further discussion? Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Menard.
Aye.
Hibma.
Aye.
Jerdy.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Briggs.
Aye.
Cavalier.
Aye.
Kressel.
Aye.
Platt.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 9.08 is a resolution regarding approving the partial payment estimate number 1 for the Central Park Campground Improvement Project.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you. Delane, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Henry. Discussion?
Yes, what this is a payment for work partially completed, $209,000 with a 5% retention. The total work being completed is 20%. But if you go down there, they've made some significant changes to Central Park, and this is a partial payment request and consistent with our contract with them.
All right, thank you, Corky. Further discussion?
What is the completion date on that? Do you have a?
June 30th, 2024.
Oh, we have to have it done by June 30th, 2024. We don't have an alternate completion date. That's the completion date they're shooting for, because we have to have it done by then to get our legacy money.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
Is there any concern about that not being completed in time?
I don't believe there's any concern now, no.
Further discussion? Hearing none, can I roll call, please?
Menard.
Aye.
Hibma.
Aye.
Jerdy.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Briggs.
Aye.
Cavalier.
Aye.
Kressel.
Aye.
Platt.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 9.09 is a resolution regarding approving the partial payment estimate number 1 for the agricultural road, street, and utility construction.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Joe.
Joe, thank you. Second?
Second.
Second by Don. Thank you. Discussion?
Yes, this is the AIC road. They've about half done, 48%. The last 52% might take a little longer. But they're asking for the payment with, again, a 5% retainage, so that we make sure that they get it done before they get all their money.
And that's
So-
partially paid for with state money, correct?
Yes, yes. Quite a bit of it's by state money, in fact.
Yeah, I was just wondering, just hearing from, was it Marty? who is the person that just talked?
Yes,
Marty
Marty
Seifert.
Seifert.
Yeah, that there was quite a bit of money for agricultural infrastructure.
And I'm not sure if our money from the state came from that or another source.
Okay.
But yes, if I recall, approximately $430,000 is coming to assist with that from the state.
It'd be interesting to see if there's any other funding for that.
That grant was gotten by the EDA, I believe, so I can certainly talk with our EDA director about that.
Okay, thank you.
So, my understanding is gonna take some time to complete the other 52%? So I guess, weren't they talking about whatever they're, by first part of September out there?
August 15th is what the completion date was. They did get the east half of the road poured last week, and they'll do the other half this week. But we did run into an issue with our storm sewer and the gas line, the main gas line coming into town out there. There's a conflict. And the gas line, to lower that high-pressure gas line, the gas company has to order some parts, and it's like 120 or 140 days out. So it's probably not going to get done this year. But fortunately, the storm sewer is outside the roadway, so we'll get the roadway done. It will be usable, but then we'll have to go in next spring and get that gas line lowered so we can complete our storm sewer. And the storm sewer will be functional. We're going to come up with a temporary fix, so it'll be functional if we get rain this fall or spring runoff. So.
But the road will be completed.
The road will be completed and usable, yes.
So basically, to complete the storm sewer, next
Next spring.
and
Yep.
that, no tearing up the road, or?
Nope, the only thing that we'll have to wait on is the approach coming from the road up to Ingersoll Avenue. That was gonna be a concrete. We'll have to leave it gravel until that gas line gets lowered.
Okay.
And then we can pour that approach.
Thank you.
Yep.
Further discussion? Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Menard.
Aye.
Hibma.
Aye.
Jurdy.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Briggs.
Aye.
Cavalier.
Aye.
Kressel.
Aye.
Glatt.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 9.10 is a resolution regarding approving the Greater Minnesota Legacy Grant application for the Crookston Parks and Rec.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Your Honor.
Second by Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, what we
Discussion?
have here, you'll see that there are two. I drafted the first resolution.
That was that one.
This is the one.
But the second one is what the template for the legacy grant wants. They have a certain form they need or want, and so we substituted their template so they can accept it because it's exactly what they want.
Further discussion?
My understanding, this is for additional funds from that legacy grant.
Correct.
And then-
$500,000 is being applied for with a match by the city of 125,000, 25%. This is so we can attempt to get the bathhouse built. As you may recall, the last two bids we had, one was 600,000 and one was 777,000. We do have some monies available to us from the city, and with this, if we got the grant, we could complete the bathhouse, and we'd have to, maybe we would rebid it, but we'd have sufficient money to do that. It would not be the storm shelter bathhouse. It would be the enhanced but not storm shelter. This facility here would act as the storm shelter for the campers.
So, Corky, when do they decide on this grant application? Any idea?
I'm not certain when they are, but I believe it's before the end of the year.
Because my concern is if we're relying on, let's say, another 500,000, are we gonna have that bathhouse completed in time for our deadline in 2024?
This would be outside that deadline. The deadline is for the campground itself.
Okay.
And my understanding, just, so I'm stating the obvious, maybe just for people who aren't aware, but initially, like, our budgeting for this was pre-COVID, and so a significantly larger cost is incurred.
Oh, for sure.
And then the other piece of this is that, my understanding is that it's not an additional matching, but they will count the matching that we've already provided as part of the
That's
initial.
been represented to us. The city placed $440,000 in a designated or reserved fund for the campground. We will be able to use that $440,000 as the match.
So it's not an additional matching.
It is not an
It's-
additional
It's counting the
125.
matching that we've already provided.
Correct.
Further discussion? Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Menard.
Aye.
Hibma.
Aye.
Jurdy.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Briggs.
Aye.
Cavalier.
Aye.
Kressel.
Aye.
Platt.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 9.11 is to introduce an interim ordinance prohibiting the sale, testing, manufacturing, cultivating, growing, transporting, and delivery and distribution of cannabis products in the city of Crookston.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this
I'll make
resolution?
that motion, Your Honor.
Thank you, Don. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Before I can give a second, are we able to amend this before we read it?
If you can amend it, then we'd have to do the first reading next time. Yes.
And that could put us in a bind because it'd be after August 1st.
I just want it clearly noted that this moratorium does not affect and cannot affect the personal usage, correct?
It cannot.
Right.
All right, because I think that's the biggest concern that I've heard from constituents.
It cannot.
So
The
it's
items
just
that are laid out
solely
in the
based on
legislation.
the business aspects of this.
Correct.
And this doesn't provide any additional way of police enforcing something that's outside of what
What
is
the
already been like.
legislation placed of record and allowed, this moratorium would not be able to impact that.
Okay.
Right.
I'm not super excited about how this reading is, but if this is clearly noted and everybody else is okay with that, I guess I would be, all right, that is, as long as we're clarifying that.
Need a second before we have discussion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Yeah, I'm just saying the same thing as Christie. It's just to make sure that nobody's gonna get in trouble for having the plants that they're allowed to have, so nobody's gonna get in trouble. Like the cultivating, it's kind of does read like, oh, you can't grow it, but it's cultivating like you're growing for mass production.
Just, one of the things
the
that it talks
transportation is the
about
one I was
is
gonna say, yeah.
you put a fence around.
Yeah.
As long
That's
as you're abiding by what has already been brought forth in legislation.
Right.
It is.
Yep.
Just, you got a new word, a vocabulary.
I just don't understand why I'm still at a loss here, why we need to have a, ordinance on what the state has already.
I think the problem is the state hasn't given clear outlines of like the zoning piece of it, and I think that is why this is being addressed.
Yeah,
And also how businesses interact, right? Those things haven't had clearly defined ways of doing, which is, I think, what it clearly states here as far as, like, there's no real good regulation for manufacturing, cultivating, all those things.
Yeah.
I think what a lot of the conversation, and Henry, add on to that is, it's more the concern that we're hearing from the city is, or city constituents is about, what if, I go to, say, Red Lake Nation and purchased a plant and transported. Is there concern about some type of possible citation that I, as an individual utilizing it for home use, could get into? And my understanding from what this is explaining is that this is not a moratorium or enforcement of citation on individual usage. It's more about giving the city time to clearly enact some regulations when it comes to how businesses manufacture, transport, cultivate, as well as where is places to be zoned and not zoned for stores that would distribute cannabis. Is that a good
Sounds good.
summation?
Yes.
Okay. It's just very complicated, and I just want to make sure we're saying it 100 different ways that we all are on the same page before.
Further discussion?
So this goes under the moratorium, then basically what we discussed earlier, this ordinance?
Yes, yes. This is the first reading. It will come up as a second reading next time. And if it's passed, then it becomes part of our ordinances.
Well, and I think there's a magic word in there, and that's interim.
Yeah.
So that means that if we continue down the road with this, we can look at reshaping it as we see fit with regard to goals setting for time, indications of how effective the ordinance is or not.
Yes,
As we
if we follow the ordinance amendment procedures
Yeah.
of our city, yes.
Sounds good.
Further discussion? Hearing none, can I roll call, please?
This is just
Oh, sorry.
the reading.
This is the
That's
first reading.
Okay. Moving on, reports, Corky.
I guess you can imagine what we spent a lot of time talking about in the last couple of weeks. But we have now recorded a program with Beck Communications for the city of Crookston as a kind of a marketing tool. There will be a 1-hour presentation. I believe it will be the first week of August. We've had partners in that. They had the University of Minnesota. Crookston had a representative. North Star Line, their founder, had a portion of that. Also, we had realtors, and then myself, who spoke on kind of the history of Crookston, and that will be aired, and you'll be getting information about that where you can see it. It'll be streamed. It'll be available in all media aspects. We had a number of discussions regarding the airport with Lowell and Chad and myself. We've had, met with various council members over their concerns. Met with Chris Boyk in the library, attended an opiate settlement meeting with the county and other cities of our county. We had a joint airport zoning committee meeting where we talked about what we're gonna do to zone so we can get the new weather observation system in place and changing runways. We attended team meetings with Ellers and our financial situation and our investments. And I will report that working with Ellers, we have increased our investment earnings threefold so far, and they will only go up further as we, Audrey and I, work with them on laddering our investments to take advantage of the higher interest rates now. Spent quite a bit of time with them. That's all I have.
Thank you, Corky. Darren, anything tonight?
Thank you. It's been extremely busy still, approximately 500 calls we responded to in the last 14 days. As we've all heard, there was an active shooter incident which took place in Fargo. Took the life of Officer Jake Wallen and critically injured Andrew Dotis and Jake Howes. I'd just like to publicly say that our thoughts and prayers go out to the officers, their families, and the Fargo PD. We had officers assist with the transport of Officer Jake Wallen from Fargo to the UND Medical Examiner's Office. We also had officers attend the funeral in Pequot Lakes, and we'll be there this Wednesday at the memorial at the Shields Arena. And we'll also be having some officers help with security at the Shields Arena on Wednesday. So just some of the recap on some of the outreach programs we're working on. Haven't reported just through other things that were going on in council, but back on June 6th through the 9th, we helped with Safety Town, if you remember. We had several officers that helped each day. It's a half-day program for a week. We had officers help with traffic, internet, and firearms safety. We also showed officer uniforms, squad cars, among other things. There was 4 groups of kids, approximately 50 people in participation. So that's an event we help with every year, been doing it for many years. Our next outreach program and the largest the CPD hosts is Night to Unite, which is scheduled for next Tuesday, August 1st, starting at 4:30 p.m. At UMC. It's on the green space in the mall area. Again, this is our largest event that we put on each year. Approximately 2,500 to 3,000 people are in attendance. This year, the theme will be honoring past and present community members, community leaders over the past 20 years. Border Patrol will be back again this year with their air interdiction helicopter. That's typically probably our most popular demonstration that we put on each year. The last couple of years for staffing and COVID and what have you, they weren't able to attend. This year again is jam-packed with several demos, dunk tank, different activities. We'll be giving prizes away about every 15 minutes. I think currently we have over 30 bike packages along with many, many other prizes that we'll be giving away throughout the night. So I invite all council members and encourage you to attend. We have a couple tables, as we do every year, set up for the council members that attend. You don't need to do anything but show up. Just show up maybe a little bit early, and we'll have your table there. We start right at 4:30 with the presentations just because it's jam-packed. So I encourage all you to attend, and it should be done by about 7:45 is our goal. Some of the training we've been doing, recently our officers completed their annual post-mandated firearms training. We're currently one training session left for active intruder, also known as active shooter training. We're conducting that at one of our local schools. We're also co-hosting a retired officer firearms training, again, which we do every year, which certifies retired officers to carry a firearm through what's called the LEOSA Act. We co-host that with the Polk County Sheriff's Office. We've been doing that for, many, many years. So all our officers have completed their field training and are in their respective patrol shifts, so that's obviously very exciting. Just to recap on last council meeting, Councilperson Christy Jurdy asked about vehicles driving on the levee at the end of Gorgas Street or near the Maplewood Park. Deputy Chief Nelson worked on that for me. He's worked with Brandon. We do have some spots dedicated for some signage. And I hope the goal is by the end of the week to have a couple signs put up down there restricting vehicles from driving on the levees. Currently in the process of finishing 2 grants. I have one Minnesota Post Board. It's an annual grant that provides partial reimbursement for post-mandated training. Another one through the federal government, which provides funding or reimbursement for up to 50% of body-proof armor or body armor that we wear. And like Corky, attended several meetings over the course of the last couple weeks. Been extremely busy, so. Any questions or anything else for me? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Shane, anything?
Thank you. Try to keep it brief. The exciting news is we've got a firefighter coming. So I think Corky had referred to that earlier, but August 7th he's going to start. So we're going to be fully staffed, so it's kind of exciting. Guys down there have picked up a lot of slack. It's been busy, but other than that, it's been good, and everybody's excited. So we're preparing so we can get him in here that first week. Being another out-of-town hire, we got to get him familiar with all of our equipment, everything that we have. So we just went through today, and we got a schedule set up, jam-packed, but by the time we get done with the week, I think he's going to be ready to go. So with that, I did miss that meeting a couple weeks ago because we were putting our Connex boxes in place, and one of those is at the street shop right now, and that's what's going to store all of our high water supplies. It's all going to be in one location. It's going to be in town. We're going to be able to access it really quick if we need to. Hopefully we don't have another incident like that, but if we do, it's going to be right there. Second one, we actually moved out to our training site, and we're going to be in the process of building into that and making that a larger compound to be able to utilize and just become better training. We conducted training at the beginning of the month, and that had to do with river operations. We had an incident earlier in the year, and between the PD and ourselves, did a lot of conversation. So we did a lot of scenario talking and stuff like that, and tried to pinpoint and smooth out what we have for response operations, because it comes in and ends up being in multiple entities. So it's not just the fire department, it's not just PD, how we can quickly get together the quickest, safest action that we can have. We also were just out at UMC, and that was kind of a twofold operation where it's driver's training. So we had some cones set up within the campus, and at the same point in time, one of the things that was discussed was the campus is big, and we got a lot of people that might not know where all these buildings are at. So we were able to take the entire staff and kind of in an interactive way, we were able to familiarize them with UMC, and at the same point in time, they got to focus on their driving skills within that kind of a campus. helping out with Night to Unite wherever we can. And then just last week attended a regional emergency management meeting that went well. We're still looking for a state representative, but everything there seems to be going well, and everybody's kind of getting ready and just ramped up again as we go. We went through a webinar that had to do with radar loops and the gaps that are in them. So it was very informative, and we're going to hopefully be working on that, and that's it. Any questions?
Thank you,
Good.
Shane.
Thanks.
Audrey, anything?
First, I want to thank the city staff and all of our department heads for the assistance that they have been providing for our city audit. Last Wednesday, our auditors, Miller McDonald from Bemidji, were in the office to do an on-site visit. Office staff still continues to work hard on the audit items that they have requested. Let's see, tomorrow the auditors will actually be on site again. So I guess I'm looking forward to that because it just means that we're one day closer to having the audit finished. Otherwise, I do know that we have had our department heads working on budget. They have requested a few times to stop in to just touch base on a few of the different items that they have been working on. So it is my hope that in the next 2 to 3 weeks that I will be able to actually have a more detailed one-on-one or two-on-one with Corky and the department head to go over those budget numbers. Otherwise, I don't have any updates at this time.
Audrey, any idea when they'll be presenting their budgets to council?
We have not set a timeline for that as of yet.
Okay.
And then can I ask, when going over budgets, is it a pretty thorough process in just making sure that things are being budgeted for properly?
It is going to be a very thorough process. It's going to not only be a benefit to our departments, but also a benefit to me. I am still learning a lot about how our departments are preparing for their services and everything that they need to make sure that our city is functioning the way it needs to. So it will be very thorough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Chad, anything?
Thank you, Your Honor. As Corky mentioned, the IT department, along with Finance Director Passa, had a very productive conversation with Lowell Miller, our airport manager, and the topic of discussion included working with the airport to extend the city network over the Halstead fiber system. That will enable us to allow them access to our finance software for better budgeting. Including budgeting, we discussed working with the airport to make sure that their fuel management, their fleet management fuel system is under software support so they can be better supported by the IT department. And we also talked with them about working together on a capital equipment replacement schedule, which includes computer workstation, video, and telephone systems upgrades. That's what I have, Your Honor. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brandon.
So the wastewater crew repaired a sewer service on Summit Avenue today that had failed. It's not really clear if it happened after the water main break or if it was on its way out. But anyways, it was close to a water main break we had about a month ago. The mosquito count after we sprayed has been hovering in the 5 to 10, so that looks like it was a good, effective spray. They're getting to the point where they're getting close to completing the utility installs in the campground, and then they'll move on to Alex after that. Other than that, the street crew's been patching streets and doing their normal tree removal and stumping and kind of regular operations for this time of the year. So that's all I got for right now.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. Greg, anything tonight? No report tonight. Thank you. Ashley, a little
Yeah,
update.
thanks for the reminder. Just to remind, because the next council meeting is not until after the election, but we do have the Polk County District 1 Commissioner special election that will be held on August 8th. Again, a reminder that there was a polling location change and both voting locations will be at the First Presbyterian Church. That is it.
Thank you. Tim, anything?
Just a shout out to Darren and his team at the police department. I went down to license my pooches and I had an opportunity to take a tour of the facility, and it really is a facility that Crookston can be proud of. The work that was done, and very impressed with the work that Chad has done with the server down there. It's a top drawer operation. So thanks for the tour.
Thank you. Delane, anything?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Joe?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Excuse me. Don?
I'd like to congratulate Morgan for joining the city council and putting her name in. Welcome. We look forward to working with you. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Don. Clayton?
Nothing to report, Your Honor.
Henry?
Nothing for me.
Christie?
I was at the Crookston CBB meeting on the 13th, and we went over some grants that were being presented. There was some conversation about reviewing the grant request guidelines, which I think is a necessary thing, and I'll be part of that process. And then that next meeting will be August 10th, and I'll have more to report.
Thank you. Morgan? Nothing?
I would just like to thank everybody, and I'm excited to work with everyone.
Thank you. I just got a couple things. I gotta go back through these resolutions. I just wanna thank the donations to the Park and Rec from the David and Lene Generix family. And let's see, the Paulette Melby family for the donation to Park and Rec. And we also have donation to Crookston Police Department for Night Tea and Night from Doris Lean, Crookston Hospitality Group, and American Crystal Sugar. Very much appreciate the donations. I am also gonna be attending the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities in Thief River over the weekend, or weekend, I guess, the next 3 days, so I'm looking forward to that. And Morgan, thanks for being here. Welcome. I think you'll be a great addition to this council, so thanks for putting your name in the ring.
You forgot one.
I forgot one.
Yep, Park and Recreation Department, take a kid fishing in memory of Adam Parno.
Oh,
Yeah, that was the Melby.
yeah. So anyway, but thank you. Just a reminder, we'll have a short Ways and Means meeting tonight. Nothing else become before council. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Committee meeting to order for Monday, July 24th, 2023. Anyway, mayor's recommendations for board committees. We just got 2 of them. Housing and Economic Development Authority is Josh, how do you say his name? Knack. He was the gentleman that interviewed for council member at large. I think he'll be a good fit.
Contacted him directly, he was excited. Thanks for calling. He said, absolutely.
Did we ever hear back from the other candidate to see if he was interested in being involved?
Yeah, I just spoke with him and said you weren't selected, but please, in the future, if you're interested in any committees, let us know.
I think with Josh, he's got that ag background, and I think that's gonna be kind of great to have on the Economic Development Board, so. And then, the Golden Link, Tim Menard agreed to be the liaison to that board.
Because I'm old.
Vintage, not
I mean,
old,
nobody was gonna
vintage.
say it, but I'm glad you
I
did.
don't be saying that, I know somebody just as old as you are.
Vintage sounds better, Tim. So.
So they can relate.
So,
Is that what you're saying?
Everybody okay with the consensus?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds good.
All right, we are adjourned.
Boom.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, thank you.